Diversity, equity, and inclusion policies at companies across the country now may be at risk of being interrupted after a group of lawyers and investors are considering using corporate law to challenge DEI policies, claiming they may have deprived shareholders of talent and violated employment laws. It's a fascinating twist in what has been a fascinating ongoing story. Our next guest outlined this case in her most recent letter. Joining us right now is Liz Hoffman, Semafor business and finance editor. I shouldn't say letter. Do we call it? It's a newsletter, really, but maybe we could call it a letter. It's like reading a letter.
I'm a reporter. I write stories, and there's some great content around them twice a week.
And a CNBC contributor as well. Liz, so tell us what's happening here, because there has been a real sort of sea change, and it has coincided with what we're seeing in academia now moving into the corporate world.
Yeah, I mean, the same just massively quickly shifting political winds have really done a 180 on, it was just 4 or 5 years ago that companies were being pressured really to adopt these really ambitious targets. Some people might call them quotas, which is sort of how we got here, to really diversify their workforces. And it was, wildly overdue at the time. But the world's changed, and these are really soft spots, I think, for critics of these policies to go after. There's sort of a really soft underbelly here.
But what do you think of the shareholder lawsuits and the entire? There's been a industrial complex that has grown up in the last 5 years around DEI.
Yeah, look, I think the wind was already kind of coming out of the sails. I mean, if you look, chief diversity officers used to be a direct report to the CEO. I mean, a lot of those jobs are turning over and getting de-emphasized anyway, which is why I think some of these critics will be pushing on an open door when and if they do sue. Look, the theory here is that companies have been violating federal employment law, number one, exposing themselves to big liability, for which they would presumably have to pay shareholders money to fix. The other is that they're depriving shareholders of the best talent. I think the latter is going to be pretty tough to prove. There's plenty of studies out there that actually companies had been overlooking talent the other way by being not diverse enough and too prescriptive in who they were hiring. Is there real liability here? Maybe. I will say some of the cases that have been filed more by what I would call the ideological wing of this movement, rather than the professional wing that's starting to pick it up now. These are kind of Stephen Miller, Edward Bloom, these interest groups haven't done that well. They sued Starbucks, got dismissed in the fall. They're targeting IBM, doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But the truth is that these are just early. There's not a lot of legal history behind it, but people are looking really closely. And I suspect ultimately they'll find what they're looking for, which is that these policies probably haven't been fairly applied.
Right. More broadly, is there a sea change happening inside companies, irrespective of what shareholders do, around what the policies look like, what the targets look like, et cetera?
Yeah, I think this whole movement may actually provide a little air cover for executives who are getting kind of cold feet about the whole thing anyway. Not to say that they don't care about these issues. They do. But I think they were sort of begrudgingly forced to really quickly kind of change so many ways about how they run the company day to day. And CEOs just have, frankly, bigger fish to fry. They don't want to spend this much time talking about it. They don't want to keep getting yelled at by Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy. They just want to do their jobs. And ultimately, I think if there's a little bit of political air cover to take their foot off the gas here, they will. I actually think the first place you'll see it, a lot of these things were baked into executive bonus metrics. And I think a lot of us were actually pretty impressed when that happened, because no one's going to change anything that they don't get paid to change. I actually think that might be where companies start to get a bit squeamish if they start baking into how they pay people. They might have some liability, and you might see those policies start to change next year.
What do you make? We're here in the NASDAQ. We got only 30 seconds, but the NASDAQ, was one of the early companies to put out a policy effectively requiring the disclosure and an explanation around board composition.
Yeah, for their companies that are listed there. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's probably okay. These are listing rules. There's competition for listing. I can't remember exactly what the New York Stock Exchange did, but it's less prescriptive. It's saying if you're not going to have a diverse board, we want to know why, because there's actually a lot of research that says it's helpful for performance. I think that's probably a private. There's no God-given right to list on NASDAQ. I think they'll probably be fine, but you might see some of that start to change.